A warm good morning to everyone. I am Ms. Prajakta Dalai, and today we'll be learning about human brain as a CPU system. We all know how fascinating human body can get. The body is a universe in itself. It's a complex, intelligent, dynamic. It reflects beauty of life's divine. There are so many things that we don't know about our own brain yet and the capacity of our own brain. Well, David Sarnoff once said that the human body is the most marvelous machine ever created. It is more complicated than the most sophisticated computer and more artistic than the greatest sculpture. Well, that's true. That's why we can see that how CPU and the brain work together hand in hand, like they work similarly. So let's go into it, like how does the brain work as like similar to a CPU. Now let us look into brain as a CPU system. Well, the human brain can be thought of as a highly sophisticated and complex information processing system. It is nothing but similar to a central processing system. Now, let's understand the basic working of a CPU. How does it start? Well, what does a CPU do? It takes the input, it processes it, and then it sends the output. So our brain works similarly. Now let's perform a simple addition of 1 plus 1 is equals to 2. See, it didn't even take me a fraction of a second to process it. So what it did, took the input that addition is required, processed the addition, and then it gave the output immediately. So we can see that whole process of this input, processing, and output is similar to as of a CPU. That's why CPU is compared to a human brain. Both CPU and brain receive processing input, store information, and perform calculation and produce output. Well, brain does it through all the sensory organs, and CPU performs it through the input and output devices in the processing unit. Well, however, there is a significant difference between the brain and the CPU. Like example of store and process the information, and the important fact that the brain has the ability to learn and adopt. Like if I stay in strict diet of 21 days, my brain adapts to it. If I read something information, my brain learns it. It understands on its own. Well, the CPU is at default here because it cannot perform learn and adopt. It cannot do that. Well, additionally, the human brain is also capable of performing tasks such as perception, thoughts, and emotion. Like you cry when you're sad, you feel happy when you're like something joyful. Well, again, CPU is beyond this all emotion and perception and thought. Each one of it is beyond the scope of the computer. Well, now let's actually compare the CPU and the brain using few bases of comparison. So we'll start with the construction. So brain is constructed using neurons and synapses, whereas the computer is constructed using the ICs, transistors, diodes, capacitors, etc. Well, the memory growth increases each time connecting the synaptic link. Well, for example, I am sitting idly for years. I haven't performed any task to my brain, and the other person keeps on performing maths calculation. He does all the tasks. Well, of course, his memory growth and his grasping power, everything will be sharper than me because his brain was in lethargic. So, doing such tasks or doing connecting such synaptic links, each time the memory growth of the brain increases. Well, computer, it is increased by adding memory chips. Again, who designed the memory chips? A human brain itself. Backup systems. A brain has a built-in backup system, whereas the computer backup system is constructed manually. Again, who came into the action? Brain. He was the one who constructed it. Memory power, 100 teraflops, 100 trillion calculations per second, whereas computer can perform 100 million megabytes. Memory density, human brain has a memory density of around 10 circuits per centimeter cube, whereas computer has around 10 to the power 14 bits per centimeter cube. Energy consumption, brain uses only 12 watts of power, whereas computer uses gigawatts of power. Well, the information storage. We all know that the signals transferred in our brain are using electrical impulses. Similarly, the information is stored in the electrochemical and electrical impulses, not electrical impulses. Well, the computer is stored in the numeric and symbolic form, that is the binary bits that are zeros and ones. Well, while coming to the size and weight of a human brain, the brain's volume is around 1500 centimeter cube and the weight is around 3.3 pounds on average. Well, the computer size is variable, it can be handy or it can be huge. We have seen all types of computers through all the generations. Well, the brain uses chemicals to fire the action, like it uses it uses neurons, the chemicals in it to fire any sort of actions, whereas the computer is communicated through electrical coded signals, that is again zeros and ones, which are electrically coded. Well, the information processing is a bit lower than the computer. Our brain cannot perform fast calculations, like huge complex calculations in seconds. Our brain is, if we train our brain to that level, I believe that it is possible for a human brain to calculate such huge complex problems in small amount of time. Well, the computer has information processing power higher. Now, input and output equipments, we already know that sensory organs are skin, eyes, ears. Brain uses these organs to take the input and give the output, whereas computer uses the input and output devices, that are keyboards, mouse, and output devices such as monitor and speaker, again which is designed by human brain itself. Well, structural organization. Brain is self-organized. Of course, God has created such a beautiful body, and we don't know the depth of our brain. Like, it's very fascinating. It's very huge. Well, computer is pre-programmed and structured. Again, it is pre-programmed by a human brain itself. Parallelism. Brain has a massive parallelism. We can perform 2 to 3 tasks simultaneously in our brain, whereas in computers it is very limited. We all know this. Well, reliability and damageability properties. Brain doesn't have any wear and tear. It is self-organized. You don't have to go maintain files. You don't have to check for any viruses, bugs. It is self-maintaining and reliable. You don't go open brain and put oil to manage it. Well, computers perform monotonous job, and it cannot correct itself. A human brain has to interfere to connect itself. So one can imagine the capability of the brain, like how huge and diverse it is. Well, now talking about the capability, let's perform a simple task. Look at the red dot, Chota Bheem. Of course, we all have watched in our school day. Look at this red dot for more than 5 seconds. You'll start noticing the color of Chota Bheem, the orange dhoti, his skin, his hair, his eyes. Though it is a negative image, you start noticing colors. Why? Because it's been imprinted on your mind as you have watched the cartoon. Cool, isn't it? There are many more such brain teasers that your brain can perform. This was just a simple example of how much of capabilities. Can can computer do it? No, for it's just a negative image with a red dot. Well, there is a myth that people say that we have used only 10% of our brain. Well, it may or may not be true, but oh, trust me, if one uses their 100% of their brain, then they will be unbeatable. There is nothing more powerful than that human brain which uses its 100%. Well, now we know how the brain works as CPU, or how it is compared to the CPU, and how much more capable the human brain is. Well, thank you everyone for listening to my session. I hope each of things were clear. Thank you. This was all about brain as a CPU system.